Hello, and welcome back to Journey to King's Cross, a Harry Potter book podcast. We had just finished off Chapter 2, Dobby's Warning, and I have to admit, the artwork feels like a little bit better than the previous one. We get a nice, solid image of Dobby, relatively well proportioned, so I can't exactly say I have any serious complaints with his overarching appearance.
Yeah,
and
his
everything.
eyes aren't big enough.
Yeah.
According to the book,
They're
his
supposed
eyes
to be
are the
tennis
size
balls.
of tennis balls, and that's huge. They don't look big,
And
nearly
terrifying.
big enough in that picture.
To be fair, I've played tennis in the past and everything. Tennis balls are not nearly as big as you think, and your eyes are actually bigger than what you see. You just only have the eyelids cover up. So technically, he could be having a more calm expression instead of his eyes bugging out of his head.
So if his eyes are as big as tennis balls, then they're even bigger because your eyes are. How big are they? The size of softballs? Jesus.
As big
I've
as an
said-
ostrich. I was just curious what animal had the same size or similar sized eyes. An ostrich's eyes are almost 2 inches in diameter, nearly the size of tennis balls. So imagine this little tiny creature with ostrich-sized eyes.
That's insane.
Staring back into your soul from a bush.
Okay, but
It's a miracle Harry didn't fucking scream.
well, technically, he almost did when he saw the whole thing in front of him. Basically,
That's true.
Whenever I look at an ostrich, I don't see like, wow, what big eyes you have. It's more like, oh dear God, you're a really big bird. So for all we know, his head and body could be properly proportioned, so it's not like the fuck.
Which I'm pretty sure he's not properly proportioned. So it looks
Well,
even weirder.
To be fair, then I'd be more concerned about what other parts of his body are.
He
still
did
proper.
say, the little creature.
All I know is that house elves have big heads and little arms.
I have to admit,
T-Rex!
It took Mitch a little bit to get that one.
no, whatever.
Or he was ignoring it. He's being a professional over here.
Yeah, it's a lie. But anyway, we were basically the entire chapter is more or less a conversation between Dobby and Harry about future events and everything. And while we kind of know Voldemort is like the only reoccurring and major antagonist throughout the course of the series, they really probably could have spread out a little bit over the course of this a couple of the books to have other antagonists. Though to be fair, Lucius
Technically we did.
would qualify, I suppose, as the true major antagonist, since, well, as far as we're aware, Voldemort had no input on the use of his diary.
Fair. Totally zoned out there. I don't even know what I was gonna say.
Must not have
fair
been
enough.
important.
We, let's see here. We get a lot about, like, house elves, how they work and how they operate. I still feel like they could have done more with this element and everything, but, hindsight's 20/20 and everything. And J.K. Rowling had other things on her mind when she was writing these book series rather than the house elf subplot and everything.
Oh, you mean as in with spew and everything?
Yeah, I kind of would have preferred if that didn't just if it was just dropped in a sense. Like, we don't talk about it, we don't think about it and everything. You know what? Leave that up to
you.
you.
It sounds like a kind of a, oh look, I'm a social justice warrior, and then moves on. It's like having a token gay character.
No.
Look, they're totally gay.
I would totally argue against this because all of the social justice stuff gets less attention than this. This is a really, really dark and horrible aspect of the wizarding community. We're going to bring it up during this book and everything in order to really emphasize how evil the main villain of the series is. And then we're going to have some semblance of lip service of one person trying to actually fix things, and then we're going to completely drop it. If the house elf thing was only relevant to this book alone, and every other house elf we ran into was just a regular working Joe, it wouldn't have been a big deal.
Which, to be fair, technically, yes. Every other house elf we met was a regular house elf. Dobby was the outlier here. All the other house elves were like, please just let us work.
Time out. Time the piffle out. what part of that statement that I said had anything to do with them being normal house elves? I said working Joes. I did not say anything about them.
Okay, my bad. What do you mean by regular working Joe then?
What Dobby basically is at the end of the series.
Oh, okay.
He gets a frickin' pay. He gets an allowance. Yeah. He gets time off. He is
okay,
legitimately
so all house elves were basically normal working people. Like, they got paid and shit, and Dobby was, like, the only
one that was a slave because of some ancient, like, contract or something.
That's
okay. Like,
gotcha.
Instead of this is the other way around. This is something evil wizards do. This is not something normal people do. Would have been a nice little there you go, and moving on. But this gets brought up again.
But it's constantly shoved in our face about no, normal wizards do this.
Yeah, and that doesn't exactly make a ringing endorsement for Wizarding Society, considering
That's fair.
Like. We can have records, we can have radios and stuff along those lines, but God forbid we actually emancipate the slaves.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. In the rest of the books, did you miss a color change? You did.
Whoops. That's
sorry.
Pretty far back too.
I'm working on a blanket for my friend who's having a baby, and I messed up the color change halfway through where I'm at, so I gotta rip a bunch out, and I just got mad at myself.
Just leave it. Wait, which direction are you going from?
It's the A in Life Finds a Way.
So it's basically fine. The midpoint.
Alternatively, why don't you cover it up with white? Like, you could go around the stitches and make it like... It'll look kind of like a puff stitch.
I'll think about it. I'll figure it out. Let's get back on track.
All right.
Don't let me derail us.
Yeah, we get lots of, like, the whole thing with, like, Dobby and everything. And
I'm surprised Dobby got his message out without... at all, because of all the times he had to frickin' punish himself or beat himself up, or the fact that he was too awestruck by Harry.
The thing is, though, is that throughout the course of the series, the house elves, when they want to get around something, are like lawyers. They will find a loophole, and while there is clearly some things he's sworn to secrecy on and everything, he's still capable of weaseling himself around. I'm fairly confident if Dobby went to Dumbledore instead of Harry, Dumbledore probably would have had all this shit figured out before the end of the day.
And 100%. Also would have done nothing.
Not necessarily.
I think he would have tried to test Harry. Also, so, what doesn't make any sense is that Dobby mentions knowing that Harry fought off against Voldemort again as an 11-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Right? But then suddenly, because he knows that Voldemort's going to come back, or the stuff with the journal,
look,
not the specifics, but then he's like, nah, you as a 12-year-old definitely couldn't possibly fight against Voldemort, even though you did it last year.
To be fair, this is one of those one-series ones where, like, the book 2 is one of those Jenga towers, in my personal opinion. In the sense that if you change too many aspects or certain aspects of this whole... okay, so out of all of the events and everything, would you imagine the Ford Anglia literally saving their lives during the spider thing? If they don't take that car to school... They die in that forest.
It really is a
butterfly
effect. Obviously, I know all. We're not here to. We're here to pick this apart. I'm just saying.
I'm like, but that's just it. Is that it's like Dobby being here and actually causing problems and stuff is important for Harry's survival in a sense when it comes to the series.
I know. I'm just saying how little sense it makes. It could have been done. Honestly, it would have made more sense if Draco had sent Dobby as a freaking prank. And then he's like, I need you to go get Harry in trouble. And make up some... And Dobby tried to slip in a warning while he did that, but, like, it would have made more sense. I'm just saying, because, like, you can't fight against Voldemort in your 12th or second year. It's kind of silly. Or just don't mention that he knew that he fought against Voldemort.
I get what you're saying, but I also counterpoint, Dobby is very consistent in this characterization. He goes out of his way, basically mortally trying to wound Harry in order to get him sent home, even though the freaking have a nurse that could probably put him back together faster than Dobby can break him. You know what I mean?
Dobby tries real hard, though.
But that's just it. Dobby doesn't necessarily move in a logical way. He's not even human, so why would any of his actions and activities actually make external logic?
That's fair. I'm just saying it also just doesn't make sense. Yes, obviously the character-wise anyway,
he is consistently inconsistent. So it's like complaining that the Joker is an agent of chaos and he doesn't make any bloody frickin' sense. Yeah, that's part of the character, though.
Yeah, I'm just...
You take that away from him, you basically have a MacGuffin. Let him have some semblance of a personality, even if it's a poor one.
I do have to say, I feel like seeing Dobby at this chapter, like, we grow to love him, but I feel like we forget, Dobby, you were an ass.
Yeah. And, like, okay, I get that, like, I'm just saying, from a writer point of view, you could have just left out the bit about him fighting Voldemort the previous year. Yes, obviously Dobby doesn't make sense, but ultimately he does sort of logic everything back to trying to help, but, like, again, that doesn't make sense.
Trying to help in a totally backwards way.
To be fair, he's actively more helpful than a lot of the other people he runs into on a regular basis, even if he's doing a poor job of it. So you know what? I'll give him that.
You're doing something.
Which is more than can be said for most of the Hogwarts staff.
Yeah.
Some are actually counterproductive. Usually they're the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, but, you know, that's beside the point.
The thought I had while listening to this chapter is I never really made the connection of the fact that Dobby's like, yeah, Dobby has to punish himself sometimes 5 times a day or whatever. And it really makes you think, are they just doling out the punishments just for their fun?
They were, because he says that they remind him to do extra punishments.
So it really makes you... Spoilers. No, we're not at the end of the book, but I feel like it really shows where Malfoy gets his bullying behavior, because he's grown up in a home where he can treat Dobby like this. True. And so, like...
To be fair, though, we don't know who specifically is treating Dobby bad.
Oh, we know for a fact Lucius is a dick.
Oh, well, Lucius,
we know Lucius, 100%.
But we don't know 100% if Narcissa
or
Draco. But you're right, he'd still learn, well, Dad beats up this... He's also taught that it's basically dirt beneath his shoe, like...
So, to me, it kind of calls in to question slightly, is the redemption that's tried to be made for Malfoy towards the end of the series would that legit have been a thing, or is that the writer trying to salvage the character?
In my personal opinion, Rowling never made any attempts to redeem Malfoy, make him sympathetic,
or that, yeah.
But I've never seen. I don't recall going through the series ever thinking that Rowling was trying to make Draco a redeemed character.
No, she has actively, from what I remember, she's actively been annoyed that people try to redeem Draco or that people complain about Draco needing redemption. She's like, no, he was awful. He's the worst. And I'm like, I'm sorry, if we can forgive Snape, if people forgive Snape, Severus, I killed your parents, Snape.
But
Severus, I wanted your dad dead so I could bang your mom, Snape. But we can't forgive Draco, who, as far as we know, has not actively killed somebody. Or actively was for sure, definitely, completely complicit about killing somebody without being basically blackmailed into it. Draco, he can't have a redemption? That's stupid.
I've always chalked up a lot of who gets forgiveness and who doesn't within the Harry Potter community is entirely based off of who we get to see being given a raw deal, in a sense.
I would say that Draco got an extremely raw deal.
Exactly my point.
Yeah, and Snape was a bully.
But the thing is, though, is that Snape also got bullied. We had a whole fucking scene about it and everything.
True, but he also bullied back.
Yes, but you also need to remember the majority of the people watching these, like, paying attention to Harry Potter are movie watchers.
That's true.
So you gotta take into consideration that a lot of Malfoy's worst actions and a lot of Severus Snape's worst actions are completely and totally absent from the actual movies.
That's true, but even still, even the worst action that we see Draco do is still nothing compared to the worst action we see Snape do book-wise.
Oh, yeah.
Book-wise, Draco's never done something nearly as... The worst thing he did was let the Death Eaters into Hogwarts.
The attempted murder of a hippogriff in Book 3 by faking an injury for an extremely long period of time.
That he caused to himself.
Yeah. Okay.
That one right there, I feel like should definitely hit harder because we love animals and everything, and Buckbeak is a beautiful creature. And how frickin' dare you?
Fair. I will give you that. I will argue, in Draco's defense, not saying it's a great defense, not saying there's a lot of leg to stand on. One, his original intention was probably not to get this animal killed.
Oh.
Two, but he was committing to the bit of getting hurt. His dad's like, nope, we're gonna execute this motherfucker. And Draco can't exactly go back and be like, ooh, shit. Because it would make his dad lose face and him lose face. And he's basically been taught, you don't back down. You do what you want. You're a Malfoy. So we have no idea. Sure, he acts real shitty about it. And I'm not saying it's great, but we have no proof that he was actually, like, not on the inside, oh shit.
Was he slapped or was he punched in the book? I can't remember exactly what it was that Malfoy was doing that would have pissed Hermione off so thoroughly that she would have...
He's a little cockroach.
Because it's not like he's out there to actually watch the destruction that he's brought on. That sounds like a really remorseful child who's like, oh, sweet, I'm going to stand out here and watch this poor innocent creature that I framed get its head chopped off.
Look, man.
I'm just saying, we've had many warning signs when it comes to our future freaking serial killers, and usually...
They start with animals.
They start with animals. And they have a joy in watching them die and suffer.
Valid. But again, possibly he could have been trying to save face and fucking has to keep up appearances.
There was nobody else there. It was him and his two friends.
His cronies were there.
His cronies do whatever he tells them to do.
Yeah, but the way you stay in power is to keep power. And if he had backed down on this... he would have looked weak in front of his cronies.
He backed down when he was told to kill Dumbledore.
In front of Death Eaters.
That's sorry, I just got really aggressive there.
Okay, you're right. He did back. Because he didn't have the nerve to actually kill somebody.
That's the redemption I was referring to earlier, is that he couldn't kill Dumbledore, and then everyone's like, oh my god, poor Draco, this poor soul was forced into doing this horrible task. And I'm like, no, this motherfucker's your dick.
And not to mention, it wasn't until he realized he might fail, and towards the end of it, he was bragging about it apparently on the way to the way in, because Harry got suspicious of him.
Fair.
So it's just like, oh man, look how important I am. That
Voldemort's. I don't think he bragged about what his mission was. I think he bragged about the importance of having the mission, even though I'm still not convinced that Draco was completely on board with it. It was, we'll kill your parents if you don't do this.
Dude, he literally says that in the book 1, that his freaking Harry's gonna meet the same sticky end of his parents if he doesn't straighten out.
I'm not saying he was a little shit, I'm just saying he could have been redeemed, and he was...
Redemption for, I am of the opinion that if you are a bully, you are not... by law, required to forgive those bullies.
I agree.
I'm on the side of Harry. I'm on the side of Marinette when it comes to their schoolyard bullies. It doesn't matter if they can be redeemed. It's not necessary.
I'm just saying that J.K. Rowling was a bitch and I think Draco deserved a redemption arc.
Forgive me for siding with the homophobe.
Chloe deserved a redemption arc. She was getting her redemption arc.
Chloe Bourgeois?
Yeah. She
was
Yeah.
so entitled to that she
Now,
threw
wait.
it away after a while.
Hold on, stop with this. Harry Potter or Ladybug? We can
Okay.
discuss Chloe
well,
later.
Real quick, sorry guys, since we're here, the creator of Ladybug literally was pissed. Same thing. Was pissed that people were happy that Chloe was getting redemption, so he undid all of the work that they did. Or he was like, no, I hated her the whole time, and I was never gonna actually make that a thing, and that was bullshit. Because don't just undo a character's fucking. She was changing, literally changing, and then they're like, just kidding.
Hermione, Malfoy got what he fucking deserved, if not worse. The entire Malfoy family got off inhumanly lucky.
They got
Personal
very-
opinion, all three of them should be in frickin' Azkaban
Yes.
for half of the shit they've done, if not more so. You know what I mean?
I-
Amount of I don't want to kill somebody is ever going to make...
Okay.
Wow! You did the bare minimum as a human being.
Okay.
Clearly that entitles
Hear
you
me-
to a
hear me
redemption
out,
arc.
though. Draco was raised by his parents the way he was, and things could have turned out differently for him if people had actually shown. If, like, for example,
It is
if
not
Harry
on
had
the-
been his friend.
It is not on the onus of other people to make a person better.
I'm not saying
That is exactly what you're
I'm
saying.
is that
I'm sorry, but if somebody says, "Oh, wow, you don't have any freaking parents. Life must suck to be you," on a regular basis, I am under no obligation to try and redeem this person.
I've caused an argument, and I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm
just
enjoying
saying-
myself.
No, what I'm saying is that Draco's upbringing had a huge part in the way that he acted. And I'm not saying that it's up to somebody else to fix him, but he also didn't really have a good mentor to show him how to be a better person. Because nurture is a huge part of somebody's personality. Who were his role models? His dad and Snape. And then all of his dad's friends, who were former Death Eaters. I have to say that, like, things could have been different. I think that he could be a good person. He just has all this toxic backstory he has to undo. He needs therapy, and he might be a decent person.
I feel like
I'm not saying that he shouldn't pay for the things that he did do, because he should. But it doesn't mean he can't become a better person.
The problem with that
As
line
well.
of logic is that sets every other person that is a bad person in the exact same spot he's in. And okay, Crabbe and Goyle, they're both kids. They both had parents that were in the Death Eaters and stuff along those lines. They could have been a better person if they had been raised properly. Like,
Sure.
Harry himself has every excuse in the world to hate the world that he is in. If anybody out of all of the kids has any right to want to go kill muggles and stuff along those lines, how about we talk to the person that's being starved to death in this current chapter?
Fair.
The point...
One cup of soup he has to share with an owl.
Yeah, like, I get what you're saying and everything.
point where he
and I'm
wonders
not
if he's going to be
arguing
alive
with
in
the
4 weeks.
idea and the principle behind it and everything. But at a certain point in one's life, one is responsible for one's own desire
agree.
to become a better person. And
But
he did not, like, the thing is, though, is if we really want our redemption arc and stuff along those lines, we've got Dudley. And that's about as probably... that
Dudley's
right there
redemption arc
is the
makes sense to
key ingredient into why I don't believe Malfoy should have one, is because if it was intended by the author to have one, he would have gotten one.
I'm not... Okay, I'm just... What I'm... Well, obviously, the redemption arc would have come later. What I mean is just that, like, the whole forgiveness of Draco.
It's never going to happen by Harry, Hermione, or Ron.
so.
All
And
th-
I think that's... I mean, I get it. You're not required to forgive your enemies. I'm just saying that... I'm losing my train of thought here, man.
Draco Malfoy could have been a good person, but just like he could have been a good person, every evil person in the book series could have been a good person under different circumstances. And at the end of the day, I'm really kind of like, my problem being is the way you're talking about this. It's like, okay, you're right, but that also kind of brings into question every other person that also acts like this in the series.
Fair.
Lucius could have been a good person if he had been raised properly.
Okay, but
Narcissa's sisters, though, prove that you can change at any given point in time. But
yes.
at the same time, you can dig your heels in and continue to act like a twat, like Bellatrix.
That's fair. But we have evidence in the books of Draco hesitating, doing something that you could take it as, man, he looks like he was trying to kind of do the right thing there, but because of the perspective that we're seeing, obviously Harry and his overall red lenses of hatred for Draco, but some of the things...
Which is justified, because Draco is a mean piece of shit.
I'm just saying, again, back to my original point, Draco is more able to... I can forgive Draco more if he was to have a whole healing thing than Snape. Snape just doesn't make any sense to be, we love him now, and not the, well, what about Draco? Oh no, he's a fucking little twat kid.
Well,
what?
To be fair,
I'm sure he was a little shit, but the whole point was it would have made more sense for Draco to send Dobby to torment him.
Kind of surprised that didn't come up in his brain, to be perfectly honest. I guess I could give Draco some credit. Is when he's being a complete and utter bully, he likes to get his hands dirty. Because it feels
he likes people to know it was him.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh yeah, if Dobby would have been sent there to torment Harry and stuff along those lines, Dobby would have explicitly stated it. And that probably is why he never did. Because if he's not exactly stupid. So I get the distinct impression he's just sort of like, you know what, as much fun as it would be to send my house elf to go torment Harry, if I send him there to Harry on my orders and stuff, something important might slip. Since Malfoy, over the course of the second book, seems to know that his dad is doing this somehow. He doesn't know how, but he knows his dad's involved in it. Yes. I'm pretty confident.
When this comes up, I would like to see your evidence. Because
I didn't say there was explicit evidence, but I could have sworn there was a couple of occasions where, Draco was specifically told not to get involved in what's going on and stuff along those lines before everything went down. So that means that Draco had some semblance of foreknowledge from his dad about something going on.
Well, that would be, when I say evidence, I mean the things that are leading you to believe this. But when we get to that in the books, we'll talk about it then.
I'm pretty confident it's the Polyjuice Potion chapter where Harry and Ron go and actually talk to him, is when he actually mentions this.
Probably. I think you're right, but like I said, when we get there, let's talk about it then. Because there's more things about this chapter to talk about. Like, for example, we've detected a hover charm in your home.
Oh boy.
Oh god.
But they didn't detect an elf apparating out of his house?
Whoa,
or they didn't detect that it was elf magic? Or does that mean elves can mimic wizarding magic?
This raises so many issues over the course of the series. God.
It really does. I feel like, for the point of the plot, the Ministry of Magic can detect when magic is used, but not magical creatures. Because
which, again,
they do the same thing in 3. Is it 3? No, it's 5. When the Dementors come after Harry and Dudley, and Harry uses Expecto Patronum.
That was being covered up, though. That was a plot by the Ministry to get Harry.
I mean, I 100% believe it, but...
I think somewhere that it was Umbridge that was actually directly responsible for it, but I can't remember the exact line.
Also, it means... But Dobby's been used at least in the time that we were introduced to him, would have had to use at least 3 spells. Apparating into his room, the hover charm, and then apparating out of the house. Not to mention all the magic he would have had to use to intercept all the letters.
Oh, God.
How did they not hear him apparate in? Because it specifically says he apparates out with a loud crack. Like a whip.
Okay, he might not have apparated. He might have just snuck into Harry's room. But still, that's multiple times that he would have used magic that they didn't detect.
Elf magic is, in the book series, noted to act differently. Because creature was capable of apparating outside of the cave.
They could apparate into Hogwarts too.
That as well.
But that's
Which means that at least, that magical ability to transport themselves is at least separate enough from wizard magic that it didn't set anything off. But to really twist the nails in, one of the actual Order of the Phoenix members that is supposed to be keeping an eye on Harry, I think it was McDuggan or something along those lines.
I don't think. What about?
I don't remember his name, and that's not the important part. He apparates out, and it sets off Harry's attack instinct because it sounded like somebody had apparated.
Fletcher. Fletcher.
Yeah, Fletcher screwed off basically, which ended up getting Harry into the position where he needed to use the Patronus to begin with.
Yeah,
but that didn't set anything off either. So I'm wondering if apparition is just not being detected.
Enough. He was close enough to Harry for him to hear it, but not close enough for it to set off. But also,
Harry was in spitting distance after the pudding incident for Dobby to pop off and everything. So what? There's like how big is this range for that specific
5
spell?
5 feet from Harry? I don't know.
I mean, what do I got to be right next to him? But then again, when Dumbledore's with him, does side along apparition, it also doesn't set that off either.
So
apparition just
like
doesn't.
We said, it works when he wants to.
Plot convenience.
But also, again, with the whole elf magic is outside of the limits, why does the hover charm set it off? Doesn't make any flippin' sense.
No, it doesn't.
It's plot convenience. Like I said.
It's always been one of those annoying things. Right when you mentioned this.
And here we are again at Rowling's universe doesn't have rules because it doesn't make sense ever.
I just had a thought.
Well, to be fair.
Randy first.
What if Lucius had tipped off the ministry about... But no, then he would have had to known about Dobby being there. Never mind. Yeah. I just killed my own
about
theory.
Magic being used.
Because if you think how fast the owl arrived, I was like, there's no way that the owl would get there that fast. And I was like, well, what if they had 4 warnings that the owl was on its way? But then I was like, then Lucius would have had to know that Dobby was going there. So I kind of shot myself in the
Actually, no. What if Lucius did know?
We don't know for certain whether or not he knew, but it seemed like, from what I can remember, separate continuity and everything, but from what I can remember in the movies and stuff, he actually seemed irritated with Dobby when Harry recognized him. So, whether or not he was there
Lucius could have sent him to fuck with Harry. Hear me out. Here's a theory. Building off of Brandy's. Hear me out.
I haven't interrupted you yet.
It could. It's not likely, obviously, but there is the possibility that Lucius wanted to keep Harry away from Hogwarts because if for some reason he knew what the diary was supposed to do, I think we learned later that he didn't know at all what it was. But if he thought it would bring Voldemort back or something, or whether they think he was just being dumb and was getting rid of it. But if there's the possibility that Lucius knew what it was going to do, he would want Voldemort to use the diary, come back to power, without Harry interfering with that, so that he could go kill Harry later. Also, keep Harry untrained. It's not a very likely possibility.
It's completely impossible.
But it could work.
No. I'm disagreeing with you hard cap on this because in Book 4, Voldemort specifically says there were signs about his availability. If Lucius Malfoy wanted Voldemort back, he knew where to go. Especially if Peter Pettigrew was capable of doing it. Cornus Quirrell was also capable of finding Voldemort. Lucius, it strikes me as the type of person who likes the status quo where he can complain and be powerful. And I seriously doubt he really wanted him back.
Probably not, but also there's that whole... But probably not. However, Lucius could have also just been like, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Maybe he didn't... It's one of those things where it's like, but what if Voldemort comes back later and he did absolutely nothing ever? But at least if he put the diary in motion, and eventually Voldemort did come back, even if the diary failed, he could be like, but I tried, my lord, and cover his bases. He's not the kind of man who's going to leave himself without an escape route.
well, we know exactly why he sent the diary in. We even know specifically that he intentionally targeted the Weasley family, Ginny specifically.
Well, yeah, to take down the Weasleys and make them be
Because
like,
of
wow,
the
your
law.
daughter.
Because the law that Arthur was trying to pass for Muggle protection and stuff. So it wasn't like, oh, Lucius Malfoy was like, I need to get rid of this, or I need to bring Voldemort back. It's more, I'm going to use this as a weapon to get rid of as many of the people that are annoying me
I'm
as
just
possible.
giving Lucius a little more brain power here credit than he actually probably has. I'm just saying, expanding on the possibility that in a far-fetched theory, it could work. And Brady's theory was possibly correct. Look, man, I'm just trying to help out your wife here.
Yeah.
Buddy.
Considering how quickly you've shot down any of my theories and stuff along those lines, I feel like you're due the same.
And you shot mine down immediately anyway.
Did I not just explain that you've shot mine down in the past and that turnabout is fair play?
Anyway.
So, I guess the part of the reason we're so off topic for this chapter is this literally is just an introduction of the plot of what's going on for the most part with Dobby's warning. We get the nice little interesting look into Harry's brain basically.
He's so depressed every time he thinks of Ron and Hermione's in the conversation. He's like, "Oh, Hermione's the smart. Oh crap!
I made myself sad.
Oh, but my friend Ronald Weasley.
Damn it! I made
shit.
myself sad again.
Also, man, how fucked is his brain that his nightmare is in a zoo,
and
starving
he's in a cage.
to death, and people staring and laughing at him like.
This kid has no fucking self-worth.
This kid needs therapy.
If there was one person who needed it in this entire series,
it's Harry.
But that is such a depressing point in time and everything, and I do find it wild, weird that the freaking Masons were just sort of I have a deathly fear of birds, and I'm just sort of Jesus, your life must suck because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Pigeons alone.
I'm pretty sure starlings are a big deal in the UK.
Yeah, just a smidge. Oh, my God. Do you imagine having a fear of fucking birds, basically? And
maybe she lived in Australia and got attacked by magpies during swooping season.
Or maybe she came from that whatever Midwestern town where all the birds just dropped dead out of the air. It was 1,000 birds or something.
God, that's
terrifying.
Yeah. I forget what happened with it, but...
Cloud of CO2, probably?
I don't remember. I'd have to look it back up, but... Maybe that was why. I don't know.
I have to admit, though, the bars on the windows thing, it basically...
That would bring up so many questions from the neighbors, I feel immediately.
They already established they're sending Harry to, Stonewall or something, which is for the incurable boys, basically.
Oh, no, that's a different... Stonewall is the public's,
St. Brutus's is where he goes to next.
The correctional facility they send him to later in the third
book.
Quote. But Stonewall was just the equivalent of our public schools, I believe. Whereas I think in Britain, private school is referred to as public school. It's backwards.
Weird.
Yeah. I could be wrong. I feel like I watched a video about that the other day that it mentioned that. But yeah, basically Harry was going to the, everyman school, and Dudley was the one going to private school. But St. Brutus's was a correctional school.
It was juvie hall.
Basically.
But yeah, with that tidbit of information, I'm sure they could just be like, our nephew is a menace. We're making sure that he is not menacing. To be fair, though, this feels like it'd be embarrassing regardless. We can't raise our nephew very well and everything. So,
right?
But they don't view it as a personal failing on their own part that they raised such a miserable, mean child, apparently. Though, to be fair, anybody who went to school with Harry beforehand would probably be like, no.
That kid?
He's constantly being attacked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he was also constantly getting in trouble for things that weren't... So, the teachers thought he was a bad kid.
To be fair, they probably just sort of, had... he's one of those things where it's the kid's a bad kid only when we notice it, but if, all of the issues stem from the fact that he's trying to avoid being attacked and stuff by his... I can't help but wonder how much they actually pay attention to some of these
I was just
schools.
about to say, teachers don't pay attention to bullying, like, ever.
Yeah, considering this is in the 80s. My phone went off.
But yeah, so, like, as somebody who was also bullied in school, the teachers don't fucking care.
No, not for a general rule of thumb.
Unless you're literally, like, bleeding out, the teachers won't do shit.
Unless you fight back, in which case apparently
You're both in trouble.
we have
Yeah.
no tolerance policy. I was the victim of that one time over the stupidest thing ever. Ugh.
Man, some days I wish that my bullies would throw a punch.
Now you've got the unfortunate luck of being a woman. Women on women bullying and stuff along those lines is much more emotional damage rather than the physical aspect.
Emotional damage. Not being racist there. Quoting Uncle Roger.
No, Stephen he?
Or Stephen He. Ah, shit.
Yeah.
I thought Uncle Roger said
Uncle
it
Roger
before.
quoted Stephen he.
Oh, see, there you go.
I might be saying it wrong, but it's a different viral guy.
Memes. I'm memeing over here.
It's really frustrating though because I kind of want to talk about like the next chapter and everything so much because
Yeah,
of
we
all of
cannot.
the implications. But yeah, the whole like the Dursleys are assholes. Dobby could have probably done a better job with his warning process since Harry's a smart kid, but he ain't that smart.
I remember you were going to bring up, you didn't understand why Harry didn't just lie.
Yeah, I did mention that.
Because he's a man of his word. If he makes a promise, by God, he'll keep it. He's a man of integrity.
He'll
still
lie to
feel-
Dumbledore.
He'll lie, yes.
He'll lie.
But he
Oh,
doesn't
God.
go back on his word.
I still feel like Harry could have avoided this whole situation and be like, yes, Dobby, I won't go back to Hogwarts, or I won't go back to school, or whatever he would say. And then just
Be
get his
like-
letters, Dobby goes, and he goes, freaking
But I'm
September
going
1st.
home.
Ha! There! Yeah, that's how you would have gotten around it. I'm not going to school, I'm going home.
Oh God, it's one of those things where it's just sort of like, Harry, dude, God. There's so many occasions over the course of like, especially the first few
Look, there's
books
a reason
where
he's not in Ravenclaw.
yeah,
He's not a break boy sometimes.
Oh, man.
If you go off a movie, Harry, jumping around to grab a letter instead of swooping one off the ground, you're literally booking it out of the house. Obviously, he couldn't do that in the book because the front door was boarded up. But, in this one, just freaking don't tell the truth. But also, like, who knows if there was some kind of weird magical binding process between him and a house elf? If he swore to, if you tell a house elf something, you have to keep it or something. Who
Yeah,
fucking
he
knows?
wouldn't have known that.
You're
though.
right. Harry wouldn't have known, so he was not going to risk it. He's like, I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
what kind of weird
because
magical bullshit. Like,
Harry's all about that risk life. He would like if he does not know the rule does not exist.
I was gonna say, yeah, I don't feel like 12-year-old Harry would have ever had that thought cross his mind. I don't feel like he's had enough interaction with magical creatures.
Which is honestly slightly disappointing considering the deep set cultural roots of the Fae in English culture. You never fuck with the Fae. Ever. And like all British people I feel like know that.
But
You
Dobby's-
don't make deals.
Dobby's not a fae.
Here's the other
He's an
thing,
elf.
though.
He's the
Pop
he might as
culture.
well be.
Pop culture itself does not really exist in the Harry Potter universe either.
I know, it's really dumb.
So, you pick and choose your battles at this point in time.
I'm just saying, maybe that's the reason why he didn't make a promise. Is like that deep-rooted English fear of this guy is a magical creature. I'm not gonna make any promises to him that I don't intend to keep, even if he is only 12.
Yeah, but he didn't even know what a werewolf was.
Look, man,
Harry
She's trying.
has interacted with the magical world enough to know that all of his preconceived notions mean jack shit.
that's fair.
So
I
at
don't know,
the
werewolves
end
weren't
of...
as big of a. I feel like maybe they weren't as big of a myth in England as they were other places.
Where do you think we got
England
these myths
specifically.
from?
Werewolves of London.
We've already established pop culture doesn't exist.
I mean, you're
but
right.
Also,
because
like, I'm pretty sure if anything, it was a more Scottish and Irish thing. The English themselves, I don't think, had a lot of werewolf myths.
Oh, come on. They stole spices from around the world. You honestly think they
And
wouldn't
didn't
steal a
use
couple
them.
of myths? They still had them!
no, they did because they had a thing called hot pot. It was a Jamaican-based recipe. So yes, they stole spices and everything from around the world, and then they used them.
And then stopped using them for the rest of eternity.
Yeah, basically.
Look, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy that we think vanilla is basic, even though it's, a super incredibly expensive spice. But anyway, moving on. I'm just saying, don't make deals with the Fae. House elf, Fae. Don't make deals with an elf. Don't make deals with Dobby, that's for sure. I'll probably get killed.
To be fair, though, with the idea that he beats himself on a regular basis under orders of his parents, I'm really concerned about how much power they'd technically have over me. If I told them, yeah, I'm not going to go back to school. Yet.
I don't know if they would have a conniption fit about the fact that Harry would now be back in the house year-round, or if they would be like, cool, more torture.
Yeah, well, Vernon says he's never going to go back to that school.
Yeah, well, Vernon's about as
also-
effective a roadblock as a speed bump.
Well, you're
Like
right. It
some
doesn't make
muggle,
sense
like-
that they would not they don't want him in the
I
house.
think
It's like,
the only reason Vernon said that was because it would truly harm Harry. Harry would have been
Sure.
devastated.
that's true. If anything, he would have sent him to juvie.
Probably
But
where
that
they
would
got the
cost
idea
him
for-
money, so it's kind of like, you know what? Maybe sending
But
him
it's
back.
better than having another goddamn wizard in this world.
It's a little late for that.
And he literally kicks him out in the next book, I thought.
No, Harry
Harry
left.
runs away in that
Harry
one.
left.
Runs away. But
He
also
almost
wasn't
tries
gonna
to
let
kick
Harry-
him out in book 5 after the.
But he wasn't going to let... Dumbledore had to convince the Dursleys to let Harry back in the third book. He mentions that he smoothed things out. Things were smoothed out with the Dursleys,
Fudge.
so
Yeah.
he could come back.
Fudge said that.
Still, Vernon is back and forth.
Fudge smoothed things over with his family because Fudge is the one that talks to him
Whatever.
at the beginning of that. Dumbledore has sent a letter and stuff
In
along
book
those
5,
lines
yeah.
in book 5, where Vernon was legitimately
I'm
pushing
getting
him
my
out
wires
the door.
crossed a little bit. My point is that it literally has to be smoothed over for him to come. Man,
Vernon can't make up his mind if he wants to keep Harry locked up in the house or he wants him to get the fuck out.
It's the book 4 conundrum.
it depends on how
the one
angry
hand,
he is.
I get rid of Harry sooner. On the other hand, it makes Harry happy. It was his two
Oh,
greatest
yeah,
loves.
the Quidditch.
Getting rid of Harry and seeing him miserable. And when those two impulses collide with each other, it's
Yeah.
definitely an experience. Oh, man.
What time is it?
It's almost 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And to be honest, we've been kind of wrapping things up for a while. We've almost
I
got it
wasn't.
40. We're 48 minutes in and everything. And we've been completely off topic
The
for a
whole
good
couple
majority of times. I'm fairly confident, like, there's a point where Dobby kind of, like, hints later on that he's like, oh, well, it was a clue, you see. And, you know, before he was known as the Dark Lord, he could be freely named and everything. And I'm going to be honest with you, every single time I've read this book, I
doesn't make sense.
never caught the explanation behind this.
I caught the explanation. I just didn't think it made sense. 'Cause it's like, it's not like he said, because he says he who must not be named instead of he who hasn't been named.
That would have been made more no, it was he who has, like, you know,
Or
altering
he could have been
how
like,
you phrased
It's an
his name.
unnamed threat.
There's got to be ways around this, unless Lucius was basically like double checking every like little thing,
Point
but he
being,
still couldn't stop
Dobby
his
lied.
housefall from leaving the house to begin with.
A thought I had was when Dobby said he who must not be named, and then a couple chapters later, or a couple paragraphs later, said the Dark Lord. I'm like, why does Dobby even say he who must not be named? Because I know the Malfoys aren't going to say that. They might in public or around. Oh,
It's
they're
a you know who. Like
Okay.
everybody else.
Question then, if we're really gonna go into the weeds on terms of Dobby, where the hell did Dobby hear all of these wonderful things about Harry? If we really want to dig deep into this thought process and everything, who in the Malfoy household is singing the praises of Harry Potter?
You know what the shippers are gonna say.
Oh, I know exactly where I'm going with this one.
It was Draco, obviously. But here's the
Daddy,
other thing.
I love him!
Just because...
I'm sorry, I couldn't stop.
There's a damn good reason we know Harry and Draco
Daddy
is
Potter
a
has
big
those brilliant
ship.
green eyes.
Oh, God.
I'm so
When
sorry.
he glares at me, I just feel all of this heat inside of me.
Shows up with Lucy at the Malfoy Manor and stuff along those lines.
Okay, but
Harry and Draco.
just because he hears about all these things happening doesn't mean the person talking about Harry is praising him.
That's what I was thinking.
Draco's like, damn, that fucking Potter kid fights Voldemort again and gets even more famous. And Dobby's like, praise be Potter, he who has come.
Maybe Potter will save me.
Oh, God.
My explanation.
Harry Potter is Wizard Jesus.
My explanation for this is twofold. One, the Malfoys probably had guests over, and so they had to talk about it, and they probably weren't always interacting with former Death Eaters. If he's talking to Fudge and stuff along those lines, especially during this point in time, Fudge is not going to hear anything bad against Harry. So, part of me thinks that Dobby probably overheard business discussions and stuff, and Potter Boy got brought up or something along those lines. Second idea, anybody that the Malfoys hate in their own household and stuff along those lines would automatically be someone that Dobby would be cool with, because he hates the family that much. So I'm getting the distinct impression that having Dobby is a status symbol. And so, of course, regardless of whether or not the person that they invite over is a good person or a bad person, Dobby would have overheard conversations and stuff over the course of the 12 years of his service, basically. He would have picked up a thing or two.
I mean, to be fair, Dobby also, like, later in the series, he mentions, like, you know, that house elves were treated terribly under Voldemort. And things were better, or was it in this chapter? I don't know. But things were better now, but they were worse then. So, like, obviously, anybody who made things slightly better for them is going to be praised as a hero, a.k.a. Harry.
Hospital. It was the hospital wing after the Quidditch match. And Harry made a comment and stuff along those lines about strangling him once his arm was healed. Oh. You really got to piss Harry off for Harry to make death threats. Considering the worst Malfoy ever gotten was a beating.
Yeah. And, of course, Harry loses his power over the Dursleys about pretending to do magic.
For all the good that did him.
Right? He just got punished all the time.
He was still doing chores, still being responsible for other crap.
If I found out that the kid I was taking care of had magical powers, and who, like, obviously has done some weird shit, my first thought wouldn't be like, oh, I'm gonna,
provoke?
My first thought wouldn't be to provoke him. He was like, oh, if this kid hates me enough to use magic on me, the threat of being expelled isn't gonna stop him. This kid wants to murder me because I'm a dick to him? Oh, what? Is the school... Oh, he's really scared of being expelled? He just murdered somebody.
To be perfectly honest... That would require Vernon having more than 2 brain cells to rub together.
Oh, fair. I'm just saying.
And 2, I feel like Vernon is smart enough to realize that Harry is a decent person. So he knows that this is not going... That any of his threats are not going to have any weight.
I would argue against the fact that... I don't think Vernon understands what a decent... Vernon thinks he's a decent person. I think he just thinks that Harry...
Vernon acts differently around other people. He knows what is and isn't socially acceptable to some degree. So I get the distinct impression that even if he doesn't necessarily believe he's... I think he's entitled... Like, I get the feeling that he believes he's better than other people, and that gives him the right to do these things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, he wouldn't understand the difference between certain behaviors being good and bad and stuff along those lines. Because if he, honest to God, thought... Harry would do some actual damage and stuff along those lines, he wouldn't act like a freaking dick the entire time.
Well, again, knowing what a good or bad person is has nothing to do with how you act publicly. You can still think you're...
Yes, it does.
You can
Psychopaths
still-
are capable of keeping themselves in line with the behavior of rest of society and stuff along those lines.
Yes, but people
Just
who do
because you know the difference doesn't mean you care enough not to act on your baser instincts.
right, but
He-
like sociopaths or psychopaths, they're also very aware of the fact that they're not good people. But people who are bad people, like Vernon, think that they're good people. Just because if he abuses Harry behind closed doors, that's okay because good people obviously can still do that. He still thinks he's a good person. He thinks he's doing the right thing, and Harry's the problem.
If he thinks what he's doing is right, he would have no problems doing all of the things he does to Harry in plain sight.
That's not true. Because he knows that those things are not acceptable in front of other people.
So what
but
you're
they're
saying
okay
is
behind closed doors.
So what you're saying is he does know the difference between what good behavior and bad behavior is.
So where you're at.
But
He's
that
kind of
means that he
beating
understands.
Beating a child is socially acceptable behind closed doors. Is what he knows that in public people will have a problem with that and that it's not okay to do in public, but behind closed doors what he's doing is not wrong. Because again, he thinks he's a good person.
No. That's not what no.
We're
If
getting
you
off
know
track.
certain
we'll talk about
behavior
this after the podcast.
is
Let's talk
good.
about this after the podcast. Because this is completely unrelated. But
Most
any
of this
other Harry
conversation.
Potter theories?
No, I
No.
don't.
All right. Well, you can find me on social media at Luna's Creation Corner.
You can find me on YouTube at Brandywine Stitches and all the other socials at Hockeytown Candle Co.
Twitch, Cole Sanders, currently playing through Persona 4 Golden. It's been a real freaking treat. Anyway, keep your wands at the ready, and we will see you next time. Oh, also, please like and subscribe. We definitely appreciate it. Have a good day.